Hey readers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire Books, and I just want to make a video about my favorite book of May, which was Eat the Buddha by Barbara Demick. So the full title is Eat the Buddha, Life and Death in a Tibetan Town. And basically what Demick has done with this book is she has interviewed a very tight group of people who grew up around the same time and who knew a lot of the same people. Many of them are now refugees living in India. And she collects as much information as she can about their lives and then basically uses that to write this really compelling, well-written, emotionally resonant nonfiction. So the town that she's writing about, and pardon my extreme butchering the pronunciation, but I think it's Ngawa. And it happens to be the town that is the world capital of Tibetan self-immolations. In other words, it's the place where the most dissidents set themselves on fire to protest mistreatment by the Chinese government. And so Demick is interested in this town because it's this small town where everybody knows everybody. It's rural. It doesn't seem like the sort of place that would be such a hotbed. And yet it is. And so she goes and speaks to different people who either witnessed self-immolations or grew up during massive times of unrest and change and can really comment on the situation. So a number of things about this book really struck me. One thing I really appreciated was that a lot of the people that she wrote about really had to work hard to try to reconcile their Chinese and Tibetan identities. So because China forcibly put kids in Chinese school, exiled one girl who was the son of the last king of her town before the communist government kicked the royalty out, you have these kids who grow up learning Chinese and who are given Chinese ideals, from the Communist Party in school. And a lot of them really buy into a lot of the tenets of socialism and how people should be treated, at least in the ideal version of that form of government. So you have these people who kind of buy into the Chinese way of life, who maybe found it easier to go with that way of life in order to fit in. And then they also have this Tibetan identity that's being suppressed. And so it causes eventually a lot of pain in each of them that manifests in a different way and that leads to different kinds of actions. And the way that this is done and the way that Demick tells their lives is just really, it's sad, it's intense, it's moving, and the book is going to stay with me for a really long time. I also thought that a lot of Demick's descriptions of history and the way that the Chinese government operates, they were timely, they were interesting, and honestly, they were a little bit scary. Like, apparently there are more than 2 cameras per person in China doing surveillance. And so that's authoritarian and frightening. And I also think that maybe we should think about what we're doing here in the United States. But she also talks about policies that were designed to kind of erase Tibetan heritage and sort of force different ethnic groups throughout China. So she focuses on the Tibetans, but there are many more, trying to force all of these groups into a picture of happiness and conformity while also still being treated badly as minority groups. So I learned a lot about society and culture in China that I didn't know before. I really got to connect to the lives of people who have lived these extraordinary and sad lives full of loss and also tremendous bravery and activism. And I also just really liked the way that Demick chose to do her book, if that makes sense. So she apparently does this in her other 2 books, which I will now be reading because I really like this one. But she looks for a cluster of people who are from the same generation, who know the same people, and she pulls as much information as possible about them and their time. And she also uses their separate interviews to corroborate as much information as possible. So basically, she is trying to get as factual and accurate a report as she can. And then on top of that, she has this very human, sensitive, beautiful writing style. So her book was something I was really able to learn from and something that I had a lot of feelings about. And that is, for me, peak nonfiction. I was wild about Eat the Buddha. By the way, fun fact, apparently the title is Eat the Buddha because there were votive statues in a lot of Tibetan temples, and when the communist army came in for the first time, they were starving. They found out that these statues were made out of butter and flour, and they would cook and eat them. So they weren't actually Buddha statues, but they might as well have been. The Communist Party wouldn't have cared if they were. They still ate them right out of the temples. So that's why it's called Eat the Buddha. Anyway, I highly recommend this book. I love books that are informative and just fascinating all the way through. I actually just placed an order to go pick up later for Barbara Demick's book about North Korea, which is called Nothing to Envy. I'll be letting you know how that one is too, I hope. And yeah, that's my big nonfiction pick of the month. If you've read any good nonfiction lately, definitely let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for some. I love to learn about the world. And either way, happy reading.